One of the sweetest points for me was when I saw that the Russians were evacuating Syria in airplanes made in Ukraine. That I love the irony of that. This is huge. This primarily for the people of Syria. This 54 years of rule under one family has just been brushed aside in what is a relatively peaceful manner. That's really important for what happens in the future.
Paul, given your backstory, given your history in Syria personally, what is your reaction to the news?
Ecstatic. I'm trying to. I've been for the last couple of hours trying to think how I feel, but this is kind of, primarily for the Syrians. This is 54 years they've been living under this family, and for that to end in this manner, relatively peacefully. If you've followed the advance down from Idlib to taking Hama and Homs, it's been relatively peaceful. They've negotiated their way with most of the army units have surrendered. So, I mean, it couldn't be better, and I couldn't be happier for the Syrians. God, they deserve it. I saw what happened to them. I saw the repression. I saw the killings firsthand, and, we tried our little bit to help in any way possible. But to see them dancing in the streets of Homs last night, I was in bed with a bottle of Jura whiskey that Lindsay had given me, kind of glued to Twitter, hoping that the power would last in Odessa and I'd have enough signal to see what was happening. But yeah, couldn't be any happier.
Paul, you had first direct-hand experience and saw much evidence of the brutality of this Assad regime. So when you were there in 2012 in those tragic circumstances, did you have any idea that 12 years later, in 2024, the Assad regime would fall this way?
It just seemed, once the Russians and the Iranians and the Lebanese and Hezbollah, not the Lebanese, came in, I thought that was it. That's quite a tight vice to get yourself out of. I don't think anyone saw how it was going to end. They were just a crime syndicate, the Assads, who had such a tight hold on that country. And yes, there were pockets of resistance, and there was always people who wanted to fight back. But when you've got Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah in your corner, then you're pretty invincible. So I didn't see how they were going to get out of this. I knew they wanted to. I'd seen them try, but I didn't see how it would be achieved.
How significant is it? How important is it that the Syrian state has collapsed?
This is huge. This primarily for the people of Syria. This 54 years of rule under one family has just been brushed aside in what is a relatively peaceful manner. That's really important for what happens in the future. This hasn't been a bloodletting. This has been carefully worked with it. The Prime Minister just stepped outside of the house with the rebels. He's going to stay on and keep a continuing government going. They're going about it correctly. On that, it is massive. It's massive on the other front because we're seeing, Russia's imperialist dreams now are starting to look so broken and shady. One of the sweetest points for me was when I saw that the Russians were evacuating Syria in airplanes made in Ukraine. That I love the irony of that. So yeah, and it is momentous. It's redefining it's redefining the Middle East as we look at it now. That things have changed so much with that country, and it's not collapsed. It's rightfully changing hands. Now hopefully, they're given the space and the time to make this work, because there are a lot of people going, oh, they're just jihadists and that. It's like, well, hang on. Let's judge them by what we've seen. They've come through the towns. I've spoken to people in Aleppo who have said it's actually functioning quite well under the new. They're talking about they need the time to make this work. For the first time in a long time, Syrians are in control of their own destiny. And it's kind of not up to us now to sit and throw stones from the outside. They need the time and space to make this work, and hopefully they will. No one in Syria wants to see a broken up, fragmented, religiously segregated country. That's never what it's been about. So I think let's just hold back and let it breathe.
So Assad was very much propped up by Putin and the Russian regime. What does this mean, this collapse, for Russia's military prowess and what esteem and respect they're held with across the world?
I mean, it's getting harder and harder. And I mean, not that I've ever looked at Russia and taken them politically serious. They every utterance from that regime should not be taken seriously. Their actions should be taken seriously. What they're doing here in Ukraine, that we both watch every day, that's brutal. But they're politically, you've got people like Lavrov comes out. The man is the definition of a lie. He was putting out last night that the liberation of Syria was due to diplomatic efforts between Russia, Iran, and Turkey. I mean, just how full of shit can one person be? This. So no, we should not take Russia seriously politically. They're beyond contempt, but the only thing that Russia we should take seriously is if they start to withdraw their troops from Ukraine and do what is the only natural thing to do. It's a land grab. It's a war. It's an attempt at wiping out Ukrainian culture. You do not take people like that seriously politically. You push them back and you keep them back. It's like no one said in 1943 going we should let them. What does Hitler? What does he say politically? Fuck that. Hitler. And fuck that. It's Russia. We do not take it's a hard one to speak on. It's so emotive, but no, I mean, I don't. I think it's bad for Russia, though. This is not a good look. Having to evacuate your air bases, having to evacuate the port in Tartus.
Now, Paul, one of the crucial things that Putin appears to have lost, which is the key port of Tartus on the Mediterranean coast and a staging place for a lot of operations in Africa. So he no longer has access to the Mediterranean the same way. And meanwhile, he's kind of reliant on Turkey, a player in this conflict, not spotting them moving ships through the Bosphorus. What does this mean for Putin's global reach?
They won't let them through. They won't let them through. They're going to have to check them boats into a marina in Portugal or something. Sneak them in as yachts. They're kind of screwed. It really messes up the Russian plans. That was, they have that there for a lot of reasons. I think it's the only deep water, warm water port outside of Russia. That things are not going very well for them in the Black Sea. They've been pushed to hiding in various ports. So it's catastrophic. It's more than just, oh, we've lost the port. That was a logistics hub that got stuff in and out to the ships in the Mediterranean. Where do they go? Once they leave that port, they're in the Med. They then either go through the Suez Canal, they go left down to Africa where they've got no ports, or they go through the Gibraltar Straits, which is a tiny 3-mile wide gap of water, where I'd be tempted to launch a few torpedoes, but that's a personal thing. But then, but yeah, they are now homeless because they cannot join the Black Sea Fleet. I guess the best they can do is get up through the Baltic, up to St. Petersburg, and tie them up there. But it messes his plans up greatly.
Thank you, Paul, so much for your insights. I recommend reading Paul's work. He's published a piece in the Sunday Times today about his colleague, Mary Colvin.